Welcome to the FOMO show about TV technology and home theater news. In this week's headline, LG just surpassed Sony with its latest motion processor called Cinematic Movement. This is bigger than Sony's XR Clear from last year. So, what will Sony's response be in 2024? Speaking of LG, OLED TVs are going to be cheaper as LG Display increases production capacity of its larger OLED TVs in response to the 100-inch LCD TV threat. You can also thank LG for the display lottery chaos that's going to hit the Samsung S90D because it mixes both QD-OLED and WOLED in the same sizes, and TCL is selling its first microLED TV at half the price of Samsung's microLED TV. We're going to talk about this 163-inch TV launching in China. And Roku had a very bad week. First, luring customers to enter their credit card information just to activate the Roku TV. Then, disabling that TV unless those customers accepted the new terms of service that limited their right to sue. And lastly, 3 days later, surprise, data breach. All of this and more on today's FOMO show. Today's video is brought to you by WhoKeys. Trying to build a PC on a budget but don't know where to buy your Windows software cheaply? WhoKeys to the rescue. Use my coupon code SF20 and immediate discount with a free upgrade to Windows 11. At the bottom of this order where it says code CARD, to the right is the product key you need to activate Windows. So copy this long number, then go to the Windows menu and click on Settings. In the Settings menu at the bottom, select Update and Security. Select Activation, then select Change Product Key, paste what you copied from WhoKeys, click Next, click Activate, and you're done. You can buy Windows 11 Pro or Office 2019 Pro with my discount code SF20. Yes, I've been using WhoKeys for the last several years on my own PC builds, and it just works. The 2024 LG OLED flagship G4 has a feature that is a game changer for the first time ever. And finally, its image processing, I believe, takes a step ahead of Sony. So for context, last year, flagship OLED TVs, the Samsung S95C, the Sony A95L, and the LG G3, all great TVs, 2 of them QD-OLED, 1 of them WOLED, the LG G3. Now, the Sony A95L won because it had QD-OLED technology and XR Clear. But it was the XR Clear that stole our hearts because ultimately, once calibrated, the G3, the S95C, and the A95L looked very similar. But the A95L took that step above the other two TVs because of XR Clear. This year, the question is, what can G4 do to match XR Clear? And they did it. Not only does it appear they'll match the XR Clear in image processing, but take it a step further with cinematic movement. So the XR Clear match in terms of image processing upscaling is called AI Director. Specifically, in this article, it describes it as this new processor brings with it exclusive picture features such as AI Director processing, which can detect a director's intended color tone and adapt the picture to best express this, and object enhancing by visual perception. Very similar to what the XR Clear did for Sony TVs last year, but that just matches XR Clear. Here's where LG takes a step in front of Sony this year, unless Sony comes up with something similar. I'm talking about cinematic movement. This is where it's unique. Unlike current motion settings on all TVs, you choose your anti-judder, your motion, and then you set it. It's static. That motion stays the same throughout the entire movie. Cinematic movement, on the other hand, it looks at the scenes. For example, you're watching a movie, let's say Army of the Dead. Everything looks great, you have stutter at a minimum, not a lot of processing. Suddenly you get to this terrible scene with the pyramids panning too fast, so it's like stuttering across the screen. You're like, ah! So you stop the movie, you go to your motion setting, you take it from 0 to 4, and then it's a bit smoother, but now you have soap opera in the rest of the movie. So after that scene is over, you go back to your setting, and then you reduce it back to 0 and 1. Less soap opera, more cinematic motion. But on this feature of cinematic movement on the LG, what happens is the TV processor automatically detects this crazy fast pan that results in the stutter. It increases motion interpolation. You get a little bit soap opera only in that scene, and once that scene is over, it pulls it back down, and you're back to natural cinematic motion. This is brilliant. It requires some processing, it requires detection, maybe AI, but ultimately this takes it to another level because for the first time you don't have to be changing your settings from movie to movie, scene to scene, content to content, whatever. It doesn't matter. You set it to the way you like it, and then the TV will detect when that pan or when that scene creates unnecessary stutter. They'll increase motion interpolation in that scene. Once it's over, they decrease it to remove any more soap opera effect. Brilliant. Now, this is a first generation. I expect it will get better over time, but that's what I'm talking about. The question is, Sony, the ball is in your court. Will you do something similar? If not, I'm already seeing this feature as the possible reason why the G4 could be the winner by the end of the year. Speaking of LG OLED TVs, right, the G4 really is expensive, but it's a flagship, so that's an excuse. What about the C4, the B4? Is there going to be an A4? LG needs to lower its prices. The problem is it needs to invest in more production capacity to lower the prices, and indeed it is going to do so in the coming years. Specifically, in these articles, they are saying that LG is in fact investing $1 billion to increase capacity so that they can bring the prices of OLED TVs lower and lower. Because if you've noticed, in the last 2 or 3 years, prices have stayed pretty high, consistently high. It hasn't dropped much. But now LG is being pressed. They're being pressed by the endless Chinese TV price war, and specifically it is OLED versus the 98-inch LCD TV. No, it's not just me making this up. Out of Korea, they are observing this exact issue. Specifically in this article in the Elec. In addition, Managing Director Jiang Yun-sung said Chinese TV companies' low-price offensive for ultra-large liquid crystal display LCD TVs larger than 100 inches will pose a threat to domestic TV companies. He added, shipments of LCD TVs larger than 98 inches will drop from 620,000 units. I assume it means it will increase from 620,000 units last year to 1.16 million units this year. That's almost double. He further says Hisense in China is selling a 100-inch LCD TV that was sold for $4,999 in the third quarter of last year, but has lowered it to $1,999 in the first quarter of this year. He added, the price of a 100-inch LCD TV panel open cell is similar to the price of a 65-inch OLED TV panel open cell. Essentially, 100-inch LCD gives you maximum immersion for the same price of a 65-inch OLED, which obviously gives you better contrast, infinite contrast, better per pixel image quality, but 100 inches of immersion. How often have I said that? Someone walks into your house, they see a 100-inch TV, wow, the size, right? They don't even stop to say, hey, is that infinite contrast or just 10,000 contrast, right? Now, how many TVs must LG Display sell to maximize the economies of scale? 10 million units. So, where are they now? Last year, around 4.5 million units were sold. This year, they're hoping to increase it to 6 million, but they need to get to 10 million. Can they get there this year? Of course not. Can they even get to 6 million this year? Definitely not. My fear is they won't even break 5 million. So they're trying to push the WOLED, the QD-OLED, to sell OLED as cheaply as possible, which leads us to this next headline. LG Display to supply 800,000 WOLED, white OLED panels to Samsung Electronics. We're talking about this nightmare situation that appears to be developing, which is Samsung Electronics uses QD and WOLED together in its flagship S90D OLED TV lineup. We're not talking about unique sizes that are QD OLED only, mixed with unique sizes that are WOLED, like 43, 48 inch, okay, that's WOLED, 83 inch, okay, that's WOLED, and then 55, 65, and 77 is only QD OLED, like last year, right? No, we're talking about in the 55, 65, 77 inch S90D sizes, it may be that you get a mishmash of both QD OLED and WOLED. Truly a panel lottery. Yes, Rasmus said it. Beware of the 2024 Samsung OLED TV panel lottery. Now, some outlets did attempt to reach out to Samsung Electronics. Hey, is it going to be WOLED or QD-OLED? And Samsung's response is, it's a premium experience, regardless of the specific panels. Ambiguous. Yeah, it doesn't sound good, does it? But if you're thinking, you know what, OLED is so last year. This year, I'm going micro LED. Well, TCL is launching its first micro LED. It's a 163-inch micro LED TV, and yes, it is almost half the price of a Samsung micro LED. And when I say half, I really mean half the price per inch. So if you do the math, the 163-inch is around 110,000. The 110-inch from Samsung is 149,999 per inch. That comes up to the TCL being, let's see, $680 per inch, was the Samsung is $1,360 per inch. 680 is almost half of 1360. Boom. So I know it's still expensive. It's still over $100,000, but it puts pressure on Samsung to work harder to keep their prices more competitive. I predict next year we're going to see 100-inch micro LEDs for under 100,000. The question is, how long is it going to take for it to cut in half? Let's say under 50,000. I predict 2 years under 50,000, 3 years under 30. But we also know TCL to be all about the mini LED LCD TV, and we're talking about next year's flagship QM8. It looks like it's going to be 14,000 dimming zones on a 98-inch, 6,500 nits, and on the 85-inch, let's say about 10,000 dimming zones, 6,500 nits. Wow, TCL, man, you guys pushing the extremes of performance. I love it. And this is why the Korean companies are feeling pressured, because what is LG doing? Well, the best it could do, LG will switch from IPS to VA LCD in some 2024 QNED, and it's not guaranteed that all regions will get VA, but on the one hand, you have TCL pushing dimming zones and brightness and mini LED performance, and you have LG finally going back to the VA panel on only some of their TVs. I'm like, wow, no wonder no one is buying the LG LCD TVs, because they're just scratching the bare minimum to keep their QNED lineup alive, whereas TCL is throwing the kitchen sink at their TCL LCD TVs, mini LED TVs, and this is why it's obvious that LG is focusing on OLED. It's fallen so far behind in the LCD TV race that it's doing whatever it can to keep up. This year, I think its best TV, the LCD TV it's going to have, is the QNED 89T, because it's got the best dimming software, the precision dimming, and it's 98 inches, and I'm hoping that price drops to under $5,000 by Black Friday or by Prime Day. And the whipping boy for this week is not Vizio TV, but Roku TV. Oh, what a bad week for Roku. What a bad year. Roku, it has problems, and the problems just layered one after the other. So I'm going to set the stage, right? It's so much to unpack. We'll just take it by a timeline, or rather by issue, and then you'll see the timeline, and then you tell me if this isn't a bad look for Roku TV. We'll start with what Roku TV requires most people to do. So whether it's a Roku stick or Roku TV, you have to use a credit card to enable the Roku TV or the Roku stick. Now, many people are saying, no, you don't need a credit card, right? There's a way to do it. But that's the point. Why do you need a special way? Why can't there be a button on the bottom of the TV somewhere that says skip this step? So I put a link below. There is a link that if you register with Roku through that link, no credit card is required. But if you don't use that link, then you have to find another trick to do it. But ultimately, it's very hard to use a Roku TV without entering your credit card. So most people enter their credit card. Now you all know, you have the link below. Click on the link, I can't talk today, I'm sorry. Click on the link and you'll be able to register a new Roku device without using your credit card. Or you could enter a credit card, activate everything, and then take it off and delete it from your account. That might be the simplest and quickest way to go. Either way, I put the link below. It's the no credit card link for Roku devices. Now, most people are entering their credit card information, not realizing that they have an option not to because it's not obvious. Okay, that already annoys me to a certain degree. Now comes the second annoyance, and this is where timing is everything. So this has been around, right, entering the credit card. What has not been around is suddenly on March 5th, there was a forced terms of service acceptance where they coerce you to accept the new terms of service, or you cannot use your Roku TV. So let's say you're watching your Roku TV yesterday. Today is March 5th. Suddenly, there's this link pops up, click accept or agree, and if you don't, you can't use your TV anymore or your Roku device. You're like, what? What is this, right? So let's step back a few weeks or months. Sometime in December, there was a data breach at Roku where about 15,000 people, 15,000 customers had their data compromised, including credit card information. And Roku discovered this breach around January 4th. Here's where things get a little iffy. This new terms of service that you're being coerced to accept, right? You can't use your TV unless you accept the new terms of service I talked about. That started on March 5th. The thing is, the terms of service was updated in 2023. Like sometime last year, it was already updated. And Roku took their time to roll it out, right? There was no forced acceptance of the terms of service. And what they did differently in this new terms of service, they added a requirement for what's kind of like mediation, right? So they've always had a forced arbitration agreement. They added an additional step where before you even get to arbitration, you have to go through this informal mediation of some sort between you and their attorney or whatever. It just makes it harder for you to submit a claim into arbitration, as if arbitration wasn't already hard, right? So now they made it even harder to get to arbitration. So, this is the new terms of service, but they timed the coercion. They're coercing you to accept this new informal mediation on March 5th with that button. That if you don't click the button, you can't use your device. Then you click the button. 3 days later, oh, we're disclosing to you there's been a data breach. That's the issue I have. Look, all companies update their terms of service regularly. Not a big deal. What they don't do is wait until they forced so many people to accept their terms of service, and then a few days later, oh, data breach. Like, why didn't they do this coerced terms of service acceptance months before? Why didn't they do it after the disclosure of the data breach? Instead, they did it literally 3 days before. And this data breach was discovered around January 4th, months ago. So they had 2 months to figure out, how do we minimize the damage? How do we minimize the lawsuits and whatnot? Why don't we force them to accept this new terms of service that makes it even harder just to get to arbitration now? Hey, that's my theory. What do you guys think? Am I off base? But Roku, naughty. Come on. You don't think people could figure this out? How many of you are upset at Roku? How many of you are just saying, you know what, that's part of business. It's okay. I don't care. Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stop the FOMO.